Welcome to Shake Out Your Sleeves and Go. Support for discovering deep joy through the profound subtlety of the Zen way. I'm Dosho, and I'm here today with Melissa Myozen Blacker Roshi, a dear friend, and back in the day, one of my koan teachers. Very glad you're here with us. We'll be talking about the koan way in general, and then Record of Going Easy, Case 3, an invitation for the ancestor to go to India. Myozen Roshi is the guiding teacher of Boundless Way Zen, a Soto Zen priest, and a Dharma heir of James Myozen Ford Roshi. From 92 to 2012, she was a teacher and director of programs at the Center for Mindfulness, founded by Jon Kabat-Zinn. My goodness, that sounds important, you know? Yeah.
Very, very
Very important. Her writing appears in The Hidden Lamp, Zen Teachings in Challenging Times, and the Book of Mu, Essential Writings on Zen's Most Important Koan, and other places as well. So, welcome.
Thanks, Dosho.
First, let's talk a little about, as we were chatting beforehand about your work with the Center for Mindfulness and then transitioning into doing Zen teaching full time and work with koans, of course. So what's up with that?
Yeah, it was funny when we were talking a little bit earlier before the recording started. I think your question was, why is Zen better than mindfulness? I just adore that question. When I was first introduced to mindfulness, I was already a Zen practitioner. Mm-hmm. And had really committed myself to the Zen way. And then meeting Jon Kabat-Zinn and his colleagues at the Center for Mindfulness in Worcester, Massachusetts, I was so taken by the possibility that we could bring meditation practice to people who would not commit to the Zen path, but were looking for some relief from their suffering. And it seemed like a great way to practice right livelihood. And it was. And then it wasn't. And part of the reason that it wasn't was partly, I would say, as I got deeper into Zen, I started to see that I can safely say, and I think you might agree with this, that we emphasize awakening beyond the deluded reality that most of us live in. And in mindfulness practice, there was an out. People could still practice meditation and have no desire to wake up beyond being relieved from their suffering. Mm-hmm. So that would sometimes create a profound misunderstanding about what meditation was for. Mm-hmm. If it's not to make you feel better, then what good is it? Uh-huh. And I sometimes still have Zen students who ask that question, what is going on here? What's it all about? And even people who've had various kinds of kensho can still say that. And I think, maybe we'll go into this about how we work with people on the path.
Yeah. Well, one thing that number of things come up, but try to stay focused. One of the things that comes up for me as you were talking about that is like, back in the 90s and, even before, as the mindfulness stuff started to come on, some of those old timers were like, oh, this is going to be really good for Zen. But it really wasn't much good for Zen. So how do you understand that?
It wasn't even good for us Zen students at the time. Yeah. It prioritized happiness.
Yeah.
Over, as I've been calling it, awakening, right. Insight. It even prioritized compassion over wisdom, which is interesting. For me, they go hand in hand, and you can't separate them. So we
well, say something about that, though. How do you do that? I don't really understand that.
There's a kind of ignoring of the path of suffering as the way in to insight. Mm-hmm. That it's not something to be carved away from our lived experience, but actually is a part of the awakened life.
Oh, yeah.
Value suffering, not as a problem, but as just there's what I like to say a lot, and I said it even then when I was teaching mindfulness. There's nothing to get rid of.
Yeah.
Everything is included. And people would hear that and go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But make me happy. Take my illnesses away. Take my
Yeah.
suffering. Take this.
Yeah.
So even teaching Zen, I don't know if you have this experience. There are people who still cling very strongly to an idea that if I practice Zen and get awakening or, get enlightened, then I won't have any more problems.
Yeah.
And I can see that even in very advanced students who become disappointed with themselves because they still get angry, they still get sad, they still get afraid, they still get sick and old
And die.
die. What? Even though that's explicitly taught, it's so unbelievable. And I think, mindfulness at first, all the people who taught with me in the early 90s had some very profound meditation practice in one of the traditional contemplative paths. So we had a Sufi, and we had somebody who was doing Advaita Vedanta, and there were Buddhists, of course. But more and more people were just coming to train to be mindfulness teachers with almost no experience in meditation, and certainly not in a deep contemplative tradition. And so we used to joke that we were turning out McMindfulness teachers.
Yeah. Well, you had McMindfulness going before Ron Purser.
Oh, way before.
Way before Ron.
Way before. Yeah, we were critical of the people who would show up and say, make me a teacher. And then we would see people who would put on their websites, I trained with John Kabat-Zinn.
Yeah.
They were one of 200 people in a weekend workshop. That was
it's the credentialing aspect of our culture. It's off the scale, but I think it's very much true that we see this. Tetsugen Sensei and I also with our students is that it's one thing to say that your suffering is the grounds of awakening. But we all have this deep kind of, not all, but many of us have this kind of transcendental fantasy that the practice is going to protect us from the dirtiness of life.
That's right.
Dirtiness.
And I remember when we first started teaching, my husband David, Roshi, and I, we were talking about this with some people who were actually Unitarians. And this one guy said, oh, you're saying samsara is nirvana. We said, yeah. And it became like almost a joke. People just shook their heads. No, that's not true.
No, it couldn't be that.
No, we know lots of people. The other thing that was interesting about working at the Center for Mindfulness is that it was very important to John Kabat-Zinn to do scientific research on why mindfulness was effective. And so what did effective mean? And there was one study where it was clear biologically that people who took an 8-week course in mindfulness meditation had an improvement in their immune system. But some of those people weren't meditating at all. And the researcher at the time said to us, I don't understand it. These people are logging 45 minutes a day for 8 weeks. And then there are other people who just meditate for a couple of minutes. And they seem to have as robust a response as all these other people. And all the teachers said, well, that's because people can just sit quietly and imagine they're meditating. It's really dead sitting, as we like to say.
So the people that were meditating weren't really meditating.
Not in our way.
Right. Yeah, right.
And it was only 8 weeks, and people would take the course and they'd be done.
Yeah, well, I've been long suspicious of the research that I see, like 7 minutes a day and all these, profound effects. And I mean, the bad news is that it takes a lot more work than that. I mean, it is powerful stuff, right? But it takes a lot more work.
It takes a lifetime. It takes a lifetime. There's no question for me. And for me, personally, I'm not done with my training, even though I got, an honorific. It's, pat on the head. It doesn't really matter when it comes to living a life.
Let's look at the koan. So this is case 3. We'll jump right into the koan. You were saying earlier that there were parts of the introduction that you liked very much. We can come back to that if you want, but let me just run through just the koan and then see where this goes. The king of East India invited the 27th ancestor Prajnatara to a meal. The king asked, "Why don't you read the sutras?" The ancestor said, "When inhaling, this poor person the way does not rest in the realm of the aggregates. When exhaling, does not get involved in the myriad conditions, thus always turning millions and millions of sutra scrolls."
What a sweet story.
And yet, a sweet story, right? But in the commentary, Wansong points out that what Prajnatara revealed was so unusual that it upset many people. Maybe that's what we were just talking about.
I think that's what we were just. I think that's still happening because human beings are inherently opposed to suffering, right? So he's already described himself as a poor person of the way, right? I think that's what it says, doesn't it?
Are they opposed to suffering, or are they opposed to awakening?
Oh, that's a great question. What is the difference? I think they're opposed to a certain understanding of awakening that includes suffering in it. Right? So if you think that awakening is excludes suffering, if you think that, what does he say? I've got the notes right here. I printed it on. What you sent me, he says, "I don't rest in the realm of aggregates," which is a fancy way of saying I don't rest in the idea of a personal self, the parts of me that make me. And I also don't get involved in the myriad conditions. That's where it's a koan, because people could say, see, to be an awakened person, I just have to ignore the myriad conditions. I have to.
Well, that might be a good place to explore. So, I just posted something about Ann Hopkins Aiken's Kensho experience. And one of the things she mentions is that, and she kind of berates herself a little bit, but like for 12 years from when she got serious about Zen, maybe 15 from when she began, I think, it took her, 12 to 15 years for a Kensho, which, I don't fault her for that. But she says part of the reason for it, kind of retrospectively, is that even though her teachers, and I'm not sure if she's talking about Yasutani Roshi or Yamada Koen Roshi, one of them told her not to be obsessed with conditions, I think particularly in Zazen, but that she realized that she spent most of those 12 years, rather than being Mu, obsessed with conditions.
Well, I think the key word in what you just said, and I don't know if she used this word, is obsessed.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But it's a great word, because we are living in a world of conditions, myriad conditions. We cannot avoid them.
Yeah.
We know politics. And when I gave a talk about this, I said the king of East India invited the 27th ancestor to the White House. Persistent fantasy of mine. It's like, what would you do would you burn it down? Oh, yikes, probably. But in some brave version of myself, maybe I would do it. This is going against the way that people think of power, of the way that the world is set up to engage with conditions without being obsessed with them. And he's saying, I don't get involved. I think obsessed is an even better word here. I don't become preoccupied. I love that word. That's the word in Romance languages for worry. Preoccuparse. It's just, that is what it's like. That's my experience. I can't stop thinking about these things, but I don't have to stop thinking about them. I have to see through them. They have to become so clear as thoughts and obsessions that I can see them for what they are. It means if I'm not putting all my energy into stopping them, then I can, I think, start to cooperate with the energy of awakening, with bodhicitta, right?
Accord, you might say.
One might say that. That's a great word. Yes.
Yeah.
Be in accord with some force in the universe that is not personal.
Yeah, let me highlight, though, you're making a very good point, I think, connection with, on the one hand, not getting involved in the myriad conditions, and yet Prajnatara went to the White House.
He did. He went right there for a meal. Oh my God.
For a meal, and also didn't do his part, which was to recite the sutras and then get your meal. If you were a monk in ancient India, that was the negotiation there.
For your supper. That's when we're still doing it. We're still singing for our supper as Zen teachers. Sing for your supper and you'll get breakfast. So no, I mean, so it's it's Katagiri's book. You have to say something has been coming up a lot in Dharma discussions in our group. Like, wouldn't it be just better to just shut up and do your practice? Why do we have to say anything? Why do we have to come to Dokusan? Why do we have to participate in Dharma dialogues? And as a teacher, why do you have to say anything at all? And yet, this is what's going on. So, if a talk is an expression of the teacher's both understanding and confusion, just whatever's going on for that teacher, then that gives somebody an opportunity to engage with somebody else's mind. And it seems like that really has to happen. Mm-hmm. But Prajnatara is very clear that basically another way of saying this, I think, is that my life is reciting millions and millions of sutras every time I breathe in, every time I breathe out. This is
right. And about so now you're getting to the kind of the punchline there about the millions and millions of sutra scrolls is inhaling and exhaling. But so then what is this saying about study in Zen? I mean, there's how many pages was that printed? About 10 or something? The commentary is...
I'm excited. Oh, my God. And I love that. I love one's commentary. I love your translation of it, too.
Oh, thank you.
It's really fun. It's fun to have that background. I like to know who these people are according to... These are all legendary. I mean, Prajnatara. So... Right? That's a long time ago. Who was he? Really?
I don't know if there's historical evidence for Prajnatara or not. I think there may be some scant evidence, but the connection with Bodhidharma, of course, questionable.
Right, being Bodhidharma's teacher. And all these people who we quote, the sutras themselves, if we're chanting millions and millions of sutras, unrolling millions and millions of scrolls, what are we really doing? I mean, I think that's what you just asked, and that's all Dogen's thing about studying the way is to study the self. Mm-hmm. We're always moving people back towards the what did you call it here in this translation? The aggregates, right?
The aggregate.
Right. How do you see the arising of you? Who are you? What is it? Those basic Korean koans, that there's something, we're generating a curiosity, a wonder about not taking our ideas about things for granted.
Right. Like the idea that you shouldn't study, or the idea that you should study because, this koan is in this very long text that you, in order to find it and to kind of crack it open, and taste the marrow of it, takes study. Dogen said that in, a pretty intense little piece, so that you have to study carefully. So there's, what is Zen saying about study? What is Zen saying about anything? But what particularly in this case is, what's the Zen position on study?
It's interesting you say that. This is a thought that's just arising right now. I haven't thought about it this way before. But as a person training in Zen, we put a lot of emphasis on lineage, having a teacher, having a living teacher. Mm-hmm. We get so many people, I don't know if you do, who have read a lot of books and come in and they've never worked with a human being before. And they know everything already. It's like the story of the guy with the teacup that the teacher keeps pouring it in because the cup isn't empty. A lot of full cup people. So this is where there's a danger to a misunderstanding of study from a real Western position, that I'm going to read a lot of books, I'm going to take notes, I'm going to memorize this stuff. When I think about how I learned about Zen, and people often ask, well, how am I supposed to learn this stuff? You seem to know so much. They'll say, I didn't actually study in an academic way. Right. I'm all for academics. I think that's great. If we wouldn't have these koans, if we didn't have people working so hard on translating who learn Chinese and Japanese and can translate things. And there's a way that some people substitute that kind of study for almost like an absorption of teachings. I mean, I learned a lot from James Ford, who was our teacher, my teacher, not because he sat me down and said, here's something to read, and I want you to come back to me and tell me what you learned, but more, and this is one of the questions you had asked in your email, was why study koans at all? I mean, I feel like I've messed around now for 40 years with all these people who are just like me, who I could never know, and I don't, as you said about Prajnatara, I don't even know if he existed. It doesn't matter. But these are people that I've learned from, and I really want to know who they supposedly were and what they did and said, and learn from their examples. It's a different kind of study. So you might say it's an absorbent study. And I often say to people, and I think I have to stop saying this, read not for information, but for inspiration.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very important point. And that people can, because a lot of people that do come to Zen have strong academic background. And so they think that, of course, why wouldn't you have the same kind of study approach? So, that study for awakening, study for practice, very different than studying to absorb information in order to, puff up the separation of self and other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's some information, and some people that come that have, a solid background of kind of understanding of Buddhism can be helpful, but it also can be a big problem, right? Especially with koans, because people can think they know and find it very frustrating to find out that there's something they don't know.
Well, right. And, people also, I've seen many people who've had little inkling kind of kensho who can pass koans for a while, and then barrier arises.
Yep.
And at that point, that's an important place.
Oh, very important. Agreed.
People could just say, oh, the hell with it, and leave at that point. And many people do. I've had people do that. Mm-hmm. And then other people can really let that big wall that, it's like the iron wall, come up, use it in the sense that they let themselves dissolve.
Right.
One of the reasons I gave a talk on the introduction, I was telling you before about the blind tortoise heading for the fire. I want students who are blind tortoises. They have no idea why they're practicing Zen, but they're attracted to something. There's something pulling them. But what's pulling them is a dissolution of the self. Mm-hmm. But no one would think that, I think, ahead of time. You wouldn't want to just get rid of yourself. But then we begin to see how the self-construct gets in our way, and that we can carry it lightly with us without using it as a way to protect ourselves from the world. Mm-hmm.
Wasting time with Buddha, Kadagiri Roshi used to say.
Oh, that's wonderful. I never heard that.
That's what he said. I spend my life wasting time with Buddha. Now, Hakuin says, back to study, maybe we've exhausted it, but we'll see. Hakuin says that before Kensho, if you study, you become a parrot, imitating someone else's words. If you don't study after Kensho, you're like a car with one wheel. What do you say?
Yeah, well, I have to think about the parrot, obviously. Right. I mean, this is, pre-Kensho training and post-Kensho training are, to me, what I've learned more as a teacher, I think, about these things than I ever even considered before my own training truly began post-Kensho. But it's it's like, what I'm thinking about is, again, I only know people, right? I only know students. I know myself and I know other people. People who've had enormous Maha Kensho still need more training because of the integration. To me, this koan is a lot about the integration of practice into daily life, too. He's out in the world, Prajñatara, and he's, going for a meal to the White House. And that's a big thing for somebody to do. He could just stay home. And in our Dharma dialogue, after I gave this talk, people were talking about that. Like, why not just stay at the monastery? Why go out anywhere? And, well, to me, that's, what did he say? It's like having a car with one wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, especially because I think people have different kinds of kensho, not just about small or big, but kensho where everything drops away, and also kensho where it's very nirmanakaya-like. It's very, activity-based. I took a step forward and suddenly I felt my foot in a new way, or Sambhogakaya, where there's bliss and visions and dreams attached to it. It seems like we need all three of those ways of opening and have them all come together and blend.
The Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. Yeah.
And I love, you were wondering in the email you sent, why do we keep practicing? Why are there all these koans? And I think it really does allow people, say you've had a big kensho in the Dharmakaya, well, then you actually have to show up in a Nirmanakaya way to demonstrate a koan. That's really hard for some people. Even the most powerful kensho, you have to be able to say something or do something. And I had a teacher in a different tradition who used to say that if you don't have the Sambhogakaya, he called it the dream body experience, you get depressed. Right? Yeah. It's because there's a sweetness, there's a delight to
self-enjoyment samadhi.
Yeah, that's right.
How about one more thing that you think is the most important about this that you'd like people to take away with them?
This particular koan?
Yeah, or koan work generally, but let's stay with this koan.
Let's stay with this one because I think the if somebody has approached koans intellectually and they're not grounded in their own awakening experience, or they've hit some brick wall or some barrier, they may think that he's saying, just cool it. Don't get involved with the world. Don't, that he's literally saying, don't rest in these things and don't get involved in these things. And there's a number of koans like this. Where hears that the teacher is saying that, but in our tradition, we're not looking for that. We're looking for someone to have integrated all of the kayas and all of the ways of being awake in the world. So the Zen life is pretty risky.
Yeah.
It's not just, this is so peaceful and it's so Zen.
The view is so great up here. I'm not coming down, man.
Right. Leave me alone. And I certainly have felt that throughout my life, whenever practice veers in that Dharmakaya direction. It's like, leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, there's that tension between the samadhi. There can be. That's, I think, the underlying koan. The tension between samadhi and prajna, between absorption and deep blissful states and awakening.
Yes. Yeah, it's a subtle distinction. And it's easy to flip-flop back and forth around that subtle distinction because the feeling of everything dropped away immediately for most people, it seems to me, becomes an idea.
Yeah.
But the actual feeling of it, if we can avoid that, is so freeing and allows a lot more to happen. It allows the recognition that everything we're doing is chanting sutras. Every word.
Nice conclusion there. It's as if we were practicing awakening.
Hello, yes.
And we have a little tradition here now at the end of shaking out our sleeves. Thank you.
Thank you. What a delight.